The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Variety Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericavariety.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Crime Prevention 101. We're so happy you joined us this week. Over the next hour, you'll learn the tips, tricks, and vital information that will help you keep yourself confident and safe. Now, here's your host, Susan Bartelstone.
Welcome to Crime Prevention 101, the personal safety radio show with an optimistic perspective on a sober subject. I'm your host, Susan Bartelstone, and I am so glad that you've joined me today. As always, it is my very, very great privilege to spend the next hour with you, helping you keep yourself safe. Now, tonight's show is a first for Crime Prevention 101. We're going to be doing a panel discussion, and this is a format that I have wanted to do for a long time, and hopefully I'm going to get to do more in the future because it provides such a rich way to get expert information out to you. Now, the topic that I picked for my first Crime Prevention 101 panel is a subject that has always been especially difficult for me personally to deal with, and that is the subject of child abuse, neglect, and child sexual molestation. I never, never, never will understand this, and maybe you feel the same. Now, I've invited a very knowledgeable panel with tremendous credentials to talk about this with me today, and I'll be introducing them shortly. And we are going to look at child abuse from the perspective of the criminal justice system, the medical profession, the school system, and the parenting aspect of it. And of course, I'll be giving you lots of resources to get help and support from. And my sole purpose for the show is to present views from various aspects of this complicated emotional issue for you, and I hope it helps clarify things. And we are live tonight, so we'll be able to take call-ins at 866-472-5788 if you feel so moved to share with us. I think this will be a very informative and compelling show, so if you know someone whose life was touched by this subject who should be listening, please send out a text message about us, send an IM, give out a tweet if you're on Twitter, anything so that they can join us too. Now, let me introduce you to my panel. First up, we have Jill Starishevsky, a mother of two and an assistant district attorney in the Bronx, New York City. Jill has prosecuted hundreds of sex offenders and dedicated her career to seeking justice for victims of child abuse and sexual molestation. After working on a particularly heart-wrenching case, which involved a young child who had endured years of abuse, but finally sought help after watching an episode of The Oprah Winfrey Show, Jill was inspired to write a highly praised book, My Body Belongs to Me, which draws on her extensive experience dealing with young victims. Hi, Jill.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And welcome. Next up, we have Dr. Ingrid Walker-Descartes, and if I pronounce it wrong, Ingrid, please correct me.
That's fine.
She is an attending pediatrician and child abuse specialist at Maimonedes Infant and Children Hospitals in Brooklyn, New York, and she has decades of experience dealing with children, and particularly the treatment and prevention of child abuse. She's also the assistant program director of the Pediatric Residency Training Program and co-chair of the Child Protection Team at Maimonedes, and she's one of the co-chairs of the American Academy of Pediatrics Committee on the Prevention of Family Violence. Hello, Ingrid.
Hello, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And last, we have Connie Hammer, who spent 17 years as a school social worker dealing with children and families in crisis. And after a friend's child was abused in 1983, She founded a county-wide nonprofit agency to prevent child abuse and neglect, and then for more than 20 years has guided frustrated, lost, and hurting parents on how to raise victimless children that are resistant to child abuse and bullying. And she's also a certified parent coach, and in 2005 founded the Progressive Parent to help her reach parents who are struggling with all types of parenting issues. Welcome, Connie.
Thank you. I'm very honored to be here.
It is my pleasure. So just a little bit of framework to get us into the topic. Child abuse is customarily defined as the physical, sexual, or psychological maltreatment and or neglect of children. And statistically, unfortunately, most typically this is done by parents, guardians, or adults responsible for a child's welfare. Okay, now, Jill, let's start with you. Let's talk about the role of a prosecutor regarding child abuse. And I understand that there's some questions might be sensitive in terms of your job, so feel free to, let me know if that's, when we come upon one of them.
Sure. Well, I want to make it clear that I'm here speaking tonight as the author of this book and not in my capacity as a prosecutor, but I've been prosecuting these types of cases for the past almost 12 years. And they're, incredibly sensitive, incredibly difficult. And I think one of the reasons I wrote the book is because what I've encountered through prosecuting these cases is that most parents don't realize that children don't immediately disclose when they've been sexually abused, and therefore the abuse continues and escalates. And so the book that I wrote, My Body Belongs to Me, is my effort to teach young children, 3 to 8-year-olds, that if someone touches them, they need to tell a trusted adult right away.
Oh, absolutely. And how does the legal system in general look at child abuse? How is it usually prosecuted?
It's always taken seriously, as are, like any other crime, it's taken seriously and it's prosecuted to the full extent of the law. But what happens is often with delays in disclosure, as we often see, it makes it difficult to prosecute sometimes. So you may have a very difficult case, a very horrible case, but because of a variety of reasons, it's often difficult to take to trial or to prove at trial. So, that's one thing that prosecutors often encounter.
Indeed, and I'm sure all over the place, all over this country, it's not one of the easy ones to do.
Because the people who pick on children for a variety of reasons, and one of those reasons is there are most vulnerable victims, and oftentimes, if someone is sexually abusing an 8-month-old child, a 1.5-year-old child, you can be certain that child is not going to disclose. That child doesn't have the ability to tell. So, inherent in child abuse and child sexual abuse are these reasons that, make it difficult to find out about these cases in the first place.
And I remember also from my years, knocking around in this area, even a very young child, a lot of times they're just not such a credible witness in terms of getting, what a prosecutor would need. And they don't always. It's hard for them sometimes to express what happened, and I think we're a little better in terms of how we're getting the evidence out there, though, than it was many years ago.
And it's always important to make sure that a child is what's called swearable, so they have the ability to testify under oath, and different states have different laws on that. But the important thing is that if we can get in front of the ball and prevent it from happening, or if it's already happened, have those children disclosed, so that it can, the person can be brought to justice sooner. To me, that's the most important thing at this point. And on that note, today, I don't know if you know this, Susan, but it's actually World Day for the Prevention of Child Abuse today. And,
how amazing that!
Right. And tomorrow is National Child Day. So these are things, that I'm not even sure how many people know that. It's the kind of thing where everyone thinks child abuse, oh, that's terrible, but we have to start doing something to get the message out there in an effort to prevent it.
This is great timing for this show tonight. It just
absolutely
by accident. Thank you. All right, Ingrid, let's move on to you. What is the physician's role in this area?
Well, in terms of the physician's role, I wear two hats because I'm a general pediatrician as well as a child abuse pediatrician. So it really touches on the different levels of prevention and layers of prevention. As a general pediatrician, really my role is primary prevention, which is to prevent this from ever happening to a child. And really that entails just anticipatory guidance, which means talking about something before it happens so you can prevent it from happening. As a child abuse pediatrician, unfortunately, a lot of times when children have been abused, you've kind of seen them after the fact, if that is indeed the case. And so that's secondary prevention, where you really want to stop it from happening or continuing any further. So there, in straddling both of these roles, there's really myself catering to two layers of prevention. And the one I really try to and work most hard at doing is the primary prevention. So, and this is through anticipatory guidance. And that being said, when Jill touched on the fact that this act is something that's very hard for a lot of children to comprehend what exactly is going on, you really have to tailor that anticipatory guidance age appropriately. So the way you would deal with it with a 2-year-old isn't how you would deal with it with a 7-year-old, isn't how you would deal with it with an 8-year-old. So it has to be really tailored to suit the specific age ranges.
I'm just curious, how, can you give me a small, like a brief example of how do you tailor it?
Okay, so for a 2-year-old in my office, and they're starting to have some words and so on, one of the really important things is to teach them their body parts. And a lot of time parents are, we teach them touch your ears, touch your nose, show me your eyes. And we kind of gloss over what's below the waist and just jump right to the knees and, kind of go on. One of them is a lot of times parents have very, nicknames or cutesy names for the private areas. And it's very important that kids learn the correct names. And why it's important is because, and I really talk to them about that when they come into the office and talk to them about nicknames. And if someone calls something by a nickname, I really don't know what it is. But when you come into the office and we're talking about body parts, we're going to use the proper names. So for a 2-year-old, it's just giving them the right language.
Just as simple as that.
Just as simple as that.
Hold that thought for a second. We're going to have more about child abuse with my wonderful panel of experts coming up shortly. There's plenty of show left to tune in for, so please start tweeting about us. And, hey, we are live tonight. So if you've got a question to ask any of the panel or you'd like to share an experience, we're taking call-ins at 866-472-5788.
Opinion. Your voice counts. Call toll-free 1-866-472-5787. 1-866-472-5787. VoiceAmerica.com. After more than 17 years' experience teaching safety skills to thousands of women and men, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone concluded that by thinking and responding quickly, ideally within 20 seconds, potentially violent criminal encounters can be prevented. Using techniques from many different disciplines and illustrated by 60 real-life examples and success stories, Susan shows how it's done in her new book, Think Fast and Prevent a Violent Crime, How to Respond to Danger in 20 Seconds or Less. Check out www.crimeprevention101.com for more information.
The violent crime rate has begun to rise again. So what's more important than feeling at ease and secure in your daily life? With an optimistic perspective on a sober subject, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone brings you the information, tips, resources, and inspiring success stories that'll reduce your fear and restore your confidence. So stay tuned and stay safe with Crime Prevention 101 and Susan Bartelstone every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, here on Voice America. It'd be a crime not to listen.
Hawaii is viewed by many as one of the most beautiful places in the world to visit. The island paradise ranks second in a recent Best Places to Live poll. 7 million annual visitors can't be wrong. Now, bring a little aloha to your life each week by tuning in to From Hawaii with Love, featuring Joy Curdy and Jenny Fujita. You'll get a new perspective of life in the islands from those who live there and get a behind-the-scenes look at customs and traditions. Tune in every Thursday at 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern on the Voice America Variety Channel. Mahalo. Streaming live, the leader in Internet talk radio, VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone. Susan would like to remind you that no absolutes exist in a crime scenario, and no advice can possibly address every variable. Each situation should be evaluated individually and responded to in a way you instinctively judge best. It's Susan's aim on this show to provide you with the information and options that will help you make that instinctive assessment quickly and safely. And if you're already a survivor of the kind of crime we're talking about on the show today, or any other crime for that matter, please remember that there are no right or wrong responses in a criminal encounter, and nothing that happened to you was your fault. Even if you think you used bad judgment in a situation and left yourself vulnerable, that's never an excuse for a crime or for violence. So please, call yourself a survivor, not a victim, and understand that with time, distance, and the proper professional help, you can put what happened into perspective and get on with your life. If you'd like to share your stories, tips, or suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover, send your comments to solutions@fightsafe.com, and Susan may address some of them on future shows. That email address again, solutions@fightsafe.com. Now, back to Crime Prevention 101.
Hi, Susan Bartelstone here. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about child abuse and prevention today with a very informed panel of experts. And you can find out more information about my guests and this topic from my blog site, crimeprevention101.com. And from there, you can share each and every show on your Facebook or Twitter page, or email it to your friends who might have missed it. And don't forget to friend me on my Facebook page. I love my friends. All right, we're going to go back to my panel. And we talked about the legal system and the medical system. So, Connie, you worked in the schools for many years. What is the role of the schools regarding child abuse and spotting it?
Well, I see the role of the schools as education, but I see it as a second layer of prevention, because I truly believe that the first layer needs to come from the parents in the home. But oftentimes parents don't have the language or the confidence to talk to their children in a way that is really going to prevent abuse. So the schools, in promoting a program on the prevention of child abuse, which most schools should do in their guidance by their guidance counselor, it's always important to include parents into the program. For instance, the week or the night before, to have a parent information night so that the parents can learn additional tactics to use with their children, but also that they will know what their children are going to be taught in the school, and they will be better able to reinforce it also.
Do most schools do this kind of thing? I would hope so.
I would think so. My experience is limited to New England, but most schools who have guidance counselors who have a health curriculum will include personal safety in there. I'm sure there are some schools that maybe can't afford it. There are a lot of things that are being cut these days, but I would say most schools would.
You have no idea how difficult it was, because I'm going back years and years doing what I do, and I started as a lowly self-defense instructor, and it was so difficult to get the schools to even listen to me. And then finally we were able to start doing these programs in the school, and that was not for the little kids. We really couldn't go below high school with this. Mm-hmm. But I just want to throw out a couple of statistics. so that you get the idea of what we're really talking about. Each week, and these statistics came from the National Clearinghouse on Child Abuse and Neglect Information. And these were figures from 2002, and I got a few from 2006 also. But in 2002, there were 2.6 million reports concerning the welfare of approximately 4.5 million children. I think it's just astonishing. In approximately two-thirds, 67% of these cases, the information was sufficient enough to warrant an investigation. And approximately 896,000 children were found to have been victims of child abuse or neglect. It just amazes me. And by the way, when we talk about child abuse, it's not just beating up a child or sexually molesting a child. It can take the form of psychological abuse, not giving them clean clothes, keeping them dirty, their hygiene, yelling, screaming, abusing them. It takes many different forms than just what we might traditionally think of. Jill, the courts do they get involved in neglect cases as well, or does there have to be physical abuse in order for it to get into court?
Well, I mean, child abuse is child abuse. So if it's neglect, not feeding a child, I mean, all of those are criminal charges, endangering the welfare of a child. So, of course, the criminal courts would get involved. But, you talk about statistics, and at least with sexual abuse, I think the statistic is one in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually abused by the time they're 18. Okay, sweetie. And what that means is, it's so common, and parents aren't realizing how common it is. Like, that means look at your playgroup and consider how many of those children in your child's playgroup are being sexually abused. And, the hurdle I have to get over is that parents think that, because they don't think it's going to happen to their kid, they don't talk to their child about it. And that's when, abuse just continues and escalates.
And that's what Ingrid was saying, too. Indeed, there's got to be education on this. Ingrid, let's go back to you. When a child comes into the hospital with broken bones or bruises, do you immediately suspect child abuse? And if you do, what procedures do you follow?
Well, before we even get to the part, the child will present with a variety of symptoms. And as the child abuse physician, wearing that hat, it's very important for me to also look at other conditions that might present that way, because it's a diagnosis almost of exclusion. And what that means is that the child presents with broken bones. Is there something affecting the bones that's making them weaker than usual to deal with the routine kind of stressors that a bone would go through? So I have to kind of work down a list of differentials. And while I'm at it, just like how you would do an X-ray if the child is in pain, a part of that kind of protocol is also alerting ACS. And that's a part, because child abuse is also in that differential. So I wish I could say the moment I'm called, it's automatically child abuse. But approaching it from the standpoint of a generalist and a doctor, I have to make sure that this child isn't having some kind of nutritional condition that's affecting calcium and vitamin D in the bones. I have to work through all of this. The other thing is to make that diagnosis of child abuse is not just one doctor that comes in and says, it's actually a multidisciplinary approach. So I'm going to call the geneticist to look at this child. I'm going to call the ophthalmologist to check the eyes. I'm going to talk to the radiologist who is going to read the films for the bones. So when I say I'm the child abuse pediatrician, I'm a part of a multidisciplinary team, and at the end of the day, we all put our heads together and say, you know what, everything else on this, looks like it's okay, so it has to be child abuse. So it's not just kind of one person putting their stamp, oh, this is abuse. We actually are very careful about making this diagnosis because it can go to court and so on. So we're very careful how we make that diagnosis and make sure there are not other things going on.
Well, that's true. You don't want to jump to conclusions, and you don't want to be overly, suspicious. But certainly, if it's repeated injuries,
definitely.
I guess
and the age
that
of
would
the
be
child
a red flag right there. Interesting. All right, now, Connie, let me ask you this. Child abuse, and you deal with parents, especially in the schools, child abuse is most often committed by a family member or a trusted friend or acquaintance, particularly sexual abuse.
Correct.
Do you have any... Yes?
I said correct.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you have any, do you have any kind of advice on what households can do to be on the alert for this? You must have seen this many times.
Yes, I've made many reports to the Department of Human Services, and it's true. Many parents do become somewhat hysterical and reactive, particularly when they find out there's a perpetrator in the neighborhood. But what they need to remember is that it's not strangers who grab children off the streets who typically sexually abuse children. Perpetrators who abuse children are very careful and methodic about the way they groom their potential victims. They're looking for children who are vulnerable, who, such as infants or young children who can't speak. They're a very safe target. They're looking for children who do not feel confident and capable. They're looking for children who are very passive, and children who will easily be enticed by things such as keeping secrets or special gifts, who may not know what a normal relationship is. So there are many things that parents can do besides the external things of teaching them the correct body parts, which is very important, and telling them to say no, not keeping secrets. I like to focus with parents about the internal things that they can do to make children less vulnerable to abuse. And these are things that parents do almost every day. Most parents are going to try to build their child's sense of self-esteem and their confidence. Most parents would want their children to be assertive and teach them to be that. And most parents do role model and want and spend time telling their children what a healthy relationship is. Those are all wonderful weapons to internally boost your child's vulnerability to keep them less at risk of abuse from someone they know.
Absolutely. All right, well, we're going to be right back, continuing with this discussion about child abuse and prevention. Don't even blink your eyes.
Talk, talk, talk. That's all we do is talk. If you'd like to talk, call us toll-free right now at 1-866-472-5787. 1-866-472-5787. That's it. VoiceAmerica.com.
After more than 17 years' experience teaching safety skills to thousands of women and men, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone concluded that by thinking and responding quickly, ideally within 20 seconds, potentially violent criminal encounters can be prevented. Using techniques from many different disciplines and illustrated by 60 real-life examples and success stories, Susan shows how it's done in her new book, Think Fast and Prevent a Violent Crime, How to Respond to Danger in 20 Seconds or Less. Check out www.crimeprevention101.com for more information. It's sex education like you've never heard before. Want to improve your love life? You know, that love life. Join sexual wellness expert and certified erotic educator Jaya for Sex with Jaya. She'll bring you cutting-edge techniques to expand your erotic repertoire. Jaya will offer advice and speak with guests who will shed light on everything to do with sex. You can even listen together with that special someone. Sex with Jaya is broadcast live every Friday afternoon at 1 p.m. Pacific Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Variety Channel.
The violent crime rate has begun to rise again. So what's more important than feeling at ease and secure in your daily life? With an optimistic perspective on a sober subject, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone brings you the information, tips, resources, and inspiring success stories that'll reduce your fear and restore your confidence. So stay tuned and stay safe with Crime Prevention 101 and Susan Bartelstone every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, here on Voice America. It'd be a crime not to listen.
The Internet's #1 talk station. #1 talk station. VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone. We invite you to share your stories, tips, or suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover, and Susan will address some of these on future shows. Send your story or idea to solutions@fightsafe.com. That email address again is solutions@fightsafe.com. Now, back to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone.
Yes, I love live shows. This is Crime Prevention 101. I thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to check out my blog site, crimeprevention101.com. I'm going to have show notes on today's topics. I'm going to have direct links to all my guests and to all the resources that I mentioned on the show. And we have a caller. Robert, are you there?
Hi.
Hi, Robert. This is Robert
How are
Longley.
you?
I am so delighted that you called in. Robert, talk a little bit about why you called today.
Basically, in my particular situation, when we found out our daughter had been molested, when we went through the intake process, they started filling out the information on note cards, and I'm thinking, don't you have a computer to put this stuff into? And at the time, they didn't. So I actually built them one, and it's currently used by about 17 different centers around the country. It's being phased out in terms of a nationwide system, but I've gone on to build similar systems. It's being rolled out shortly for the New York Department of Missing Children, and it's used in other areas. So I think it's important that, when things like this happen to parents, that they find some way of, giving back and trying to, make it, a better experience for people that, have to go through it in the future if you can't actually prevent it. It's hard to prevent this. There are things that we can do, but, I've been focusing on trying to make it better for parents who have to go through it going forward.
And now, what's the name of the program for the parents?
I actually haven't rolled the program out for the parents yet. That's a separate project called victimcoaching.com. The software package that I've developed is really used for child advocacy centers and various law enforcement areas, and that's AdvocacyPro.com.
And I see here that it's you've got a series of tools that will empower victim families. And how does it do that?
Basically, having lived through this for the last several years, I've sort of become an expert by making mistakes along the way. So what we're trying to put together is, one of the things that we found I don't know if this is true for all parts of the country, but here in the Northeast, the services that are available to families are basically triage-type services, and they tend to be very episodic. Most of your services that you will, if you're involved in a child abuse situation and you end up in the court system, you will typically exhaust the available services within the first 4 to 6 months of the experience. But the court process can go up to 10 years. So there's gaps in between. And what I'm trying to put together for parents is really kind of a coaching program to help them along the way and provide continuity between the triage services they get from rape crisis centers and child advocacy centers and the courtroom support that they get from victim advocates if they happen to have one assigned. So this is still a work in progress, but I hope to have it, up and running by the first quarter of next year.
It sounds like something that could be very, very helpful, and it could also help people that, not only just the families of the victims, but you said you're designing something also for the advocates, the people that work in these fields, that will help them track the services that have been received and things like that?
That's been in use for about 6 years now, and I've made quite a few enhancements for the missing persons system, and what I'm hoping to be able to do is actually release a free version that domestic violence centers can use, and then a subscription version for more robust features, because I've gotten it to the point where I'd like to be able to expand the use of it. Because what I found is that most of the systems that are out there are beyond the cost, what most smaller nonprofits can afford, and they tend to want to customize it past what they can do with it. So I'm trying to come up with some standards around domestic violence reporting and child abuse reporting that smaller centers that aren't tied into a national network like the National Children's Alliance or other groups that now have nationally linked systems. But it is something that I hope to be able to make available to any organization who might want a copy. It'll run on just about any PC. So it's something I definitely am trying to get out more into the world right now.
It sounds very, very helpful and very useful. How can people get in touch with you if they want more information about this?
Just visit the website, www.advocacypro.com, or if they're parents interested in potentially coaching, victimcoaching.com. I'm currently trying to make sure that for the victims side of things that it is a reimbursable service under the Victim of Crime Act, so it doesn't cost them anything. But we're still working on that. I'm trying to do a test with the state of Connecticut right now, because one of the problems that I see with a lot of the nonprofits out there is that between donations being down and grant money not being available, the services just aren't available. But the way Victim of Crime Act funding is split up, there's the grant side of it, and then there's the reimbursable side. And not all crime victims are aware that they're eligible for reimbursable expenses related to abuse, and this can be for covering costs of, if they don't have a car, bus fare to a therapist, copay reimbursement, things like that. I know that they have, in some cases, for people who were really stressed out, they've covered the cost of massage and Reiki and other things. Usually, it's more associated with violent crime, where somebody's murdered and the family doesn't have money to cover funeral expenses. But most victims of sexual assault and their families are eligible for reimbursable expenses while they're dealing with the issue. So I'm trying to make it available as inexpensively as possible.
Well, this sounds like very helpful, and especially since I know it's coming from someone who's had experience with it, I am very happy that you can be on here and talk about it. The website is AdvocacyPro.com, and I have an email here, parents@AdvocacyPro.com. Robert, I thank you so much for calling in. I'm going to list this in the show notes on my crimeprevention101.com website, and I hope that you get some inquiries about it. Thank you so much for calling me.
Thanks.
Take care now. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, and Connie, this sounds like something that might be interesting to you too. So hopefully you'll be able to check it out with him. And Connie, before the break, had told you I had a question that I wanted to ask, and this is something that had occurred to me. Knowing that the statistics say that child abuse is most often committed by a family member, what can households do if they suspect that someone, besides listening to the child, what do you do if the abuser is in the family? How do you guide them? How do you give them help? What do you do?
Well, from the school perspective, when I had disclosures of sexual abuse from children, yes, it's very difficult because I'm a mandated reporter and have to make a report. And the statistics, of course, we know that most of the perpetrators are male. There are females. But therefore, when you have a family, it's usually the father, the stepfather, or an uncle, whatever, who is the perpetrator. And you're left with a mom in a position who's quite dependent and often doesn't want to believe the child, doesn't know which way to turn. So more than anything, just supporting both parents if possible, but mostly the mom, and getting her to access information and tools that will help her for the child's best interest. And oftentimes, when you talk about the long-term effects of child abuse with parents, that's usually what will turn them around to believe the child and to take proactive steps toward treatment and resolution. It's a difficult, sensitive situation all around, but it is.
It's like Robert, our caller, was saying. He was just devastated when his daughter was molested. And
right.
I think that most families would be, especially if it was somebody that was in a position of authority or trust within the family or within the network.
Yeah. This is Ingrid. I just wanted to add to that a lot of times with the focus as a pediatrician, my focus being the child is really, again, tied to what Connie said, is to support the mom, but also telling her how important it is to support the child, because a lot of times we would think the child fares differently based on the type of abuse or how invasive how physically invasive the abuse is. And actually one of the key factors in the child being able to recover from this emotionally and so on is how much support they get from that non-offending parent. And so really having them realize their role in helping the child through this and helping to better those outcomes for the child that has suffered this way.
Susan, this is Jill. I actually wanted to comment on something that Connie had said earlier. She had been talking about secrets, and I think that's a really important thing to focus on for parents. In my experience, most parents think, well, if this were happening to my child, if my child were being sexually abused, they would tell me. I would know about this. If my child falls down at the park and scrapes their knee, of course, they come running over to me. So if, God forbid, someone was hurting my child and doing something sexual, they would tell me. What they don't realize is that, when a child falls down in the park, no one presumably is saying to that child, don't tell anyone, no one's going to believe you. Don't tell anyone you fell down, and they're going to say it's your fault. Don't tell anyone you fell down, it's our secret. And in my experience, while I think most people think, the reason children don't tell that they've been sexually abused is because, they've been threatened. The abuser says, I'm going to kill your mother if you tell. What I found is so often children don't tell that they're being sexually abused, and therefore the abuse continues and escalates, like I mentioned, simply because they're told it's our secret, okay? This is between me and you. And, we tell children to trust adults, and so they're told to keep a secret, and they keep this secret. And so one of the biggest things parents can do is no secrets. Teach your children that, you can tell your parents anything. You can tell mom and dad or a trusted adult or a teacher, and therefore if an abuser does something inappropriate and says, this is just between me and you, that child might be more inclined to disclose sooner rather than later.
Good point. That is an absolutely good point. You can't keep that secret. All right, this is Crime Prevention 101. We've got still more about child abuse and prevention with my expert panel. We're going to be right back.
Talk, talk, talk. That's all we do is talk. If you'd like to talk, call us toll-free right now at 1-866-472-5787. 1-866-472-5787. That's it. VoiceAmerica.com. After more than 17 years' experience teaching safety skills to thousands of women and men, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone concluded that by thinking and responding quickly, ideally within 20 seconds, potentially violent criminal encounters can be prevented. Using techniques from many different disciplines and illustrated by 60 real-life examples and success stories, Susan shows how it's done in her new book, Think Fast and Prevent a Violent Crime, How to Respond to Danger in 20 Seconds or Less. Check out www.crimeprevention101.com for more information.
Are you a real sports fan? Get ready to talk football and anything else sports with Kwame Lassiter, formerly with the Arizona Cardinals, San Diego Chargers, and St. Louis Rams. Kwame's got the experience, so he's prepared to talk sports with you every week on Kwame Lassiter's Sports Talk. It's on the Voice America Sports Network every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, noon Eastern Time. Get ready for unpredictable fun and sometimes a sarcastic look at the world of sports. That's Kwame Lassiter's Sports Talk on the Voice America Sports Network.
The violent crime rate has begun to rise again. So what's more important than feeling at ease and secure in your daily life? With an optimistic perspective on a sober subject, crime prevention and personal safety expert Susan Bartelstone brings you the information, tips, resources, and inspiring success stories that'll reduce your fear and restore your confidence. So stay tuned and stay safe with Crime Prevention 101 and Susan Bartelstone every Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, here on Voice America. It'd be a crime not to listen.
Stimulating talk.
It gets those synapses in the brain firing really fast.
All the time. The #1 Internet talk station where your opinion counts. VoiceAmerica.com.
You're listening to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone. We invite you to share your stories, tips, or suggestions for topics you'd like us to cover, and Susan will address some of these on future shows. Send your story or idea to solutions@fightsafe.com. That email address again is solutions@fightsafe.com. Now, back to Crime Prevention 101 with Susan Bartelstone.
Welcome back. This is Susan Bartelstone. Just want to remind you that Crime Prevention 101 is available on iTunes, so you don't even have to be at your computer to listen. And I also wanted to say, if you suspect that a child is being abused, you should report it to your state child abuse hotline, because every state has one, or call the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline, and that's 1-800-4A-CHILD. And I'm going to post this in the show notes for the show. And also, every state has a child abuse website, and you can learn about the mandatory child abuse reporting laws that you may be subject to, as well as how to report that abuse. So look on the computer for that website. And lastly, of course, if you suspect that a child is in immediate danger, call 911. All right, so welcome back to my panel. We're coming down to the wire here. So, Jill, talk a little bit about the book, very briefly, if you can talk a little bit about the incident that it's kind of inspired it. And the name of the book is Your Body Belongs to You.
It's close. It's My Body Belongs to Me.
My Body Belongs to Me. Okay.
And what inspired me to write the book was several years ago, I tried a case, and not unlike most of the cases I handle, the girl didn't disclose right away. It was a little girl who was being sexually abused by her stepfather from when she was 6 until when she was 9, and she told no one. And one day she got into an argument with her mother, who knew nothing about the abuse. She got into an argument with her mother, and she said, "You love my little brother more than you love me." And so the mother had her watch an episode of the Oprah Winfrey Show on tortured children, about parents who physically abuse their kids. And Oprah's message was, if you're being hurt and can't tell a parent because it is a parent, go to school and tell your teacher. After 3 years of telling no one,
Hello, Joe. Did we lose you? Oh, no. I think we lost her. Oh, dear. Well, my body... Okay, we're going to try and get Jill back. Connie, in the meantime, talk a little bit about the Progressive Parent and what you're doing.
Certainly. I'd be glad to. The Progressive Parent is my coaching business that I started 2 years ago as an extension to help parents in a more intensive way. Parents who, of all ages, any topic, any age child. And my goal is to optimize their relationship so their children can reach their greatest potential. And when things such as abuse get in the way, it is very difficult, and parents really need intensive support. And I like to guide them by the hand, so to speak, and get them through the process.
You have tools on your website. Give out your website.
My website is www.theprogressiveparent.com.
And some of the tools that you have on the website that parents might take advantage of?
Well, there's workshops and articles. Now, my website, per se, is not particularly about child abuse. I do have a lot of clients who need support in that area, but I help any parent with any issue. So it's not focused primarily on child abuse and neglect.
If someone wanted to email you about a parent kind of issue like this, give out the email.
Connie, CONNIE, at theprogressiveparent.com.
Thank you, Connie. Jill, you back with us?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Just want to make sure to give out your website so people can take a look at this book. It's been very highly praised, and it's a very sweet book. I looked through it. It was just very sweet. Give out the website.
The website where people can get the book is www.mybodybelongstome.com, and there's if you go to the website, there's free shipping in the U.S. and they can reach me if they have any questions at info@mybodybelongstome.com.
Great. I hope everybody will take a look at this. It really the holidays are coming up. This is something that you want to get for your friends that have kids.
It is a wonderful book.
Yes. Sorry? Ingrid, anything you'd like to mention?
Well, actually, I don't have any products or anything other than just putting my 2 cents in from the primary prevention standpoint in support of books like Jill's book. And really, whenever parents come into my office and they're looking, my whole thing is to address this before it happens in primary prevention, really suggesting books like this for them to read or pick up. And for a lot of the parents that, there might be financial constraints, because I do see a huge Medicaid population where, a book might be too expensive. I actually just have mom go through scenarios that she'll run through with little one about potential and what can happen, and kind of playing them out how they would handle them.
That's very, very important. Thank you so much, guys, for being on the panel with me today. I'm so pleased that you joined me. I'm going to think about doing it again. There's so much more to talk about. But that is a wrap for now. But never fear, because you and I will be doing this again next week. And next week, I'm going to be talking about the newly passed Franken Amendment that deals with defense contractors like Halliburton requiring employees to agree to arbitration in the cases of sexual assault. And I've also got a member of the God Squad, and we're going to be talking about terrorist attacks on synagogues and churches. So this is going to be a very interesting show. It'd be a crime not to listen, so stay tuned and stay safe.
We hope you got some useful information and inspiration this week on Crime Prevention 101. Susan Bartelstone invites you to join us again next Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific at 8 p.m. Eastern Time here on Voice America. If you want to learn more about Susan's guest, sign up for her newsletter, or find out about upcoming teleseminars and workshops, go to www.crimeprevention101.com today. Have a great week and a safe week.